Where legends breathe again. Eldmyth. In Japan, some ghosts are not born from death, they are born from rage. Onryō are spirits of betrayal, injustice, and unbearable suffering, souls so consumed by hatred that even death could not silence them. When an Onryō rises, curses follow, and no one is truly safe. In the deep, silent spaces between worlds, in the forgotten corners of ancient forests and atop mountains that pierce the veil of clouds, there exists a presence. It is not a ghost, nor a demon, though it shares their haunting qualities. It is the Onryō, a creature born not of flesh and blood, but of profound, unyielding emotion. The very air grows dense and cold where it treads, not with the chill of winter, but with the glacial weight of sorrow and rage so potent it has taken form. To speak of the Onryō is to speak of a wound in reality itself, a scar left by a soul whose grief or betrayal was so absolute that it refused the peace of oblivion. It is a remnant, an echo that gained a will, a purpose as sharp and singular as a shard of obsidian. You will not find it hunting in sunlight, for it is a being of shadows and mournful twilight. Its domain is the overgrown shrine, the derelict mansion where memory lingers like dust, the mist-shrouded gorge where a terrible silence reigns. It is felt before it is seen, a pressure in the temple, a whisper that is not a sound but a feeling of profound wrongness slithering down the spine. The world holds its breath in its presence, birds ceasing their song, insects falling silent, as if nature itself fears to draw its attention. The origin of the Onryō is not written in cosmic creation myths, but in the intimate, devastating ledgers of the human heart. Its genesis is always a tragedy, a story of a life cut short by injustice, betrayal, or profound loss. Often it is the spirit of a woman, though not exclusively, who suffered greatly in life. A noblewoman poisoned for her station, a peasant woman wrongfully accused and executed, a mother who lost all her children to war or famine. The key is the intensity of the emotion at the moment of death, a final, gasping breath filled not with acceptance but with a white-hot core of no. This refusal, this spiritual implosion, fractures the natural passage to the afterlife. The soul does not dissipate, it calcifies around its central trauma, becoming a psychic entity of pure, focused intent. The Onryō is therefore a concept given legs. It is vengeance. It is sorrow. It is the cry that never ended. Early depictions in scrolls from the Heian period show them not as monstrous, but as profoundly sad, wraith-like figures at the edges of paintings, their features blurred by the artist's brush as if seen through tears. They were warnings etched into folklore, the consequences of societal wrongs, the price of cruelty, a reminder that some wounds do not heal, even in death. To encounter an Onryō is to step into a personal haunting, a theater of suffering where you become an actor in its endless, repeating tragedy. The environment warps to reflect its inner world. A perfectly warm home may suddenly reek of damp rot and decaying flowers. Summer air freezes, your breath pluming before you. Then come the sounds. First, a distant, rhythmic sobbing that seems to come from the walls themselves. Then perhaps the whisper of silk robes dragging across a floor, a sound that grows closer and closer, yet the hallway remains empty. Its appearance is a slow, terrible revelation. It often manifests initially as a silhouette against a paper shoji screen, the shadow of its unnaturally long, unkempt hair unmistakable. When it fully materializes, it is a study in mournful contradiction. Its form may be beautiful, retaining the elegance of its mortal life, but twisted by anguish. The skin is deathly pale, almost luminous. The eyes, when visible behind the curtain of hair, are voids of darkness or wells of blood-red fury. It is clad in the burial robes of its time, now eternally tattered and stained. But its most feared aspect is not its appearance, but its gaze, a focus that pins you in place, making you feel as if you are the sole source of all its boundless, centuries-old pain. The behavior of an Onryō is not that of a mindless predator, but of a meticulous, obsessive playwright. It is often bound to a location, the place of its death, or where its deepest attachment lies. Here, it enacts its rage and sorrow on the living, but its violence is rarely random. It targets those it perceives as connected to its wrong, or those who symbolically represent its oppressor. Sometimes it inflicts its pain indirectly, through a curse, illness, madness, or a streak of misfortune that stains generations of a family line. In other, more direct encounters, it seeks confrontation. It may appear at the foot of a bed, its weight felt but not seen. It may mimic the voice of a loved one to lure the vulnerable into darkness. Its touch is said to drain warmth and vitality, leaving behind a numbness of the soul, a lingering despair known as the ghost chill. Yet within its horrific actions lies a tragic core. The Onryō is trapped. It is reenacting its trauma, an endless loop of anger and grief, unable to see that the world has moved on, that the faces of its new victims are not the ones it truly seeks. It is a prisoner of its own past, and it makes prisons of the places it haunts. Protection against an Onryō is a complex tapestry of ritual, psychology, and sheer force of will, rooted in the understanding that one is not fighting a beast, but an idea. Physical barriers are often useless, as it can pass through walls. The primary defenses are spiritual and symbolic. Afuda, paper talismans inscribed with sacred Shinto or Buddhist scripts, are placed on doors and lintels, creating a symbolic barrier of purity that the corrupted spirit finds difficult to cross. Salt, a universal purifier in many cultures, is scattered across thresholds and windowsills. Mirrors are sometimes covered, for it is said an Onryō, confronted with its own reflection, a reminder of its lost humanity and its current, twisted state, may be momentarily dispelled or driven into a rage. More proactive measures involve rituals performed by ascetic monks or shrine priests. These are not exorcisms in the Western sense, but attempts at communication and resolution. The ritualist, through meditation and chant, seeks to create a calm, focused space to confront the spirit's story, to acknowledge its pain, and to guide it toward acknowledging that its time is over. It is a perilous dialogue, for the ritualist must listen to the torrent of anguish without being spiritually overwhelmed by it. One of the most enduring and tragic legends tells of an Onryō known as Owa. In life, she was a loyal wife, her face scarred by a poison given by her husband, a samurai named Eamon, who wished to be rid of her for a younger woman. Disfigured and dying in agony, her final breath was a vow of vengeance. In death, she became the archetypal Onryō. Her haunting was not a single act, but a meticulous unraveling of Eamon's world. She appeared to him in the face of his new wife, a visage melting into Owa's scarred, furious one. She haunted his dreams, turned his allies against him with whispers, and manifested in every lantern's flicker and every pool of water. Eamon, driven to madness, ended up murdering his new bride and her family, seeing Owa in each of them. Finally, pursued by her relentless spirit, he died in wretchedness. Owa's story is powerful because her vengeance was specific, poetic, and complete. She did not merely kill him. She made him the author of his own destruction, forcing him to relive his betrayal with horrific consequences. Her legend cemented the Onryō in the cultural imagination as a force of karmic retribution, a supernatural justice system for crimes the mortal world could not adequately punish. Not all encounters with an Onryō end in tragedy for the living. There are rare, poignant tales where the spirit's focus is not vengeance, but a final, unresolved task born of love or duty. In one such story, an Onryō appeared each night in a remote mountain village, causing no harm but standing silently at the edge of the woods, her gaze fixed on a particular, abandoned cottage. An elderly woman, the last who remembered the old tales, approached her not with fear, but with an offering of incense and a quiet question. The spirit did not speak, but an overwhelming sense of sorrow and anxiety washed over the woman. Following the Onryō's gaze to the cottage, the woman discovered hidden beneath the floorboards a bundle of old letters and a small, handmade toy. The Onryō in life had been a mother who died suddenly while her child was away. Her spirit lingered, not out of anger but out of a desperate need to ensure these tokens of her love were found. Once the items were given a proper resting place at the family altar, the Onryō appeared one final time, her form no longer twisted by anguish, but peaceful. She offered a slight, almost imperceptible bow before fading into the morning mist. This story reveals the dual nature of the intense emotion that creates an Onryō. It can be a destructive rage, but it can also be a love so powerful it defies the grave. The phenomenon of the Onryō also explores a terrifying collective possibility. What happens when the grief of not one but many coalesces? Legends speak of places where great tragedies occurred, mass drownings, plagues, battles, becoming nurseries for a different kind of entity. Here, the individual sorrows of hundreds may intertwine, creating a vast, amorphous haunting. This is not a single Onryō but a yureiga, a ghost field. The air in such places is permanently thick with a miasma of sadness. Visitors report hearing a chorus of whispers, feeling invisible hands plucking at their clothes, and experiencing sudden, overwhelming floods of emotion that are not their own: despair, panic, longing. In these locations, the land itself is sick with memory. Trees grow twisted, water runs unnaturally cold and dark, and animals avoid the area. To walk into such a place is to step into a psychic storm, where the boundary between past and present, between one soul and another, is utterly dissolved. It is the ultimate testament to the power of emotion to stain the world, a warning that some events are so catastrophic their echo never truly fades. The visual symbolism of the Onryō is a language unto itself. Its long, unbound black hair represents rejection of the societal order and grooming of the living. In historical context, a woman's neatly tied hair was a sign of propriety, and its wild disarray signifies a return to a primal, unrestrained state. The white burial kimono, or kayokatabira, immediately marks it as a being of death, but its tattered state speaks of the violence of its passing or the long erosion of its spiritual form by bitterness. The pale, often bluish skin signifies the absence of life's warm blood. Perhaps most telling is its relationship with water and mirrors. Onryō are frequently depicted near wells, rivers, or rising from stagnant ponds. Water is a boundary between worlds, a reflector and a cleanser. Their association with it underscores their liminal state. They are neither here nor there. Mirrors, as mentioned, repel them, but also because a mirror reflects truth. An Onryō, a being founded on a fixed point of perceived truth, its grievance, may be confronted by the terrifying, empty truth of its own current existence. A shadow without a source, a feeling without a body. In the Edo period, the Onryō found a new home in the flourishing urban culture of ghost stories, or kaiden. These were not just rural folktales but sophisticated, often politically charged narratives performed for packed theaters and published in cheap, popular booklets. The Onryō became a star of the kabuki and bunraku stages, with elaborate costumes and ingenious stage tricks, like the hikanuki, where an actor's costume is swiftly pulled away to reveal the burial robes beneath, making the transformation visceral. Playwrights used the Onryō as a vehicle to critique social injustices, samurai abuse of power, and the oppression of women in a rigidly patriarchal society. The vengeful spirit was a safe way to express societal anxieties, as its wrath was supernatural, and thus not directly challenging the earthly authorities. This period transformed the Onryō from a local folk terror into a national icon, a shared cultural symbol of the repressed returning with a fury. The woodblock prints of artists like Utagawa Kuniyoshi captured these stage moments, etching the iconic image of the pale, long-haired woman in white into the permanent consciousness of Japan. The transition to the modern era saw the Onryō evolve yet again, crossing oceans through film. The seismic impact of Hideo Nakata's Ring, 1998, cannot be overstated. Sadako Yamamura, with her long hair covering her face, her unnatural, jerky movements, and her origin in a well of profound betrayal, is the quintessential modern Onryō. The film transposed the ancient archetype into the age of technology. Her curse spread via videotape, a modern medium, but its core was the same old, unstoppable grief. This sparked a global J-horror boom, introducing international audiences to the specific terror of the Onryō, its relentless, intelligent, and rule-bound vengeance. Unlike Western ghosts who may be random, the Onryō operates with a cruel, logical inevitability, like a cancer or a curse. Its horror is cerebral and lingering. Modern video games, anime, and manga have further explored its mythology, sometimes casting them as sympathetic anti-heroes or tragic monsters to be understood, deepening the emotional complexity of the archetype for a new generation. The psychological power of the Onryō taps into profound, universal human fears. It is the fear of unresolved conflict, of the wrong we can never make right. It is the terror of being pursued by a past mistake, given form and will. It embodies our anxiety about powerful, negative emotions, our own and others. What if our rage was so strong it outlived us? What if someone's sorrow for us became a cage for their soul? The Onryō is a dark mirror to our capacity for attachment, showing how love, when corrupted by injustice, can curdle into something monstrous and eternal. It also speaks to a cultural relationship with honor, shame, and justice. In a society that valued order and surface harmony, the Onryō was the screaming id beneath the calm tatami, the undeniable truth that would not be silenced. It is the ultimate consequence of failure, failure to protect, failure to be loyal, failure to grant peace. Today, the Onryō exists in a fascinating state of duality. In rural areas, the old beliefs still hold respectful sway. Certain forests, valleys, or abandoned buildings are spoken of in hushed tones, and small, unnoticed offerings might still be left, a pinch of salt, a fresh flower to appease any lingering presence. It is a part of the living cultural landscape, a whisper of history. Simultaneously, in global pop culture, it has been dissected, adapted, and sometimes diluted. It appears as a monster of the week in television, a boss enemy in games, an inspiration for fashion and art. Yet, even in these commercial forms, the core archetype remains potent. The sight of the long-haired figure in white still triggers a primal unease. This duality proves the strength of the myth. It is both a specific cultural artifact and a universal story about pain and memory. The Onryō in all its forms forces us to ask what we owe to the dead, and what the dead, in their unresolved passions, can demand of the living. What then does the Onryō ultimately represent? It is a monument to the idea that emotions are real, tangible forces in the universe. They can outlast bones and mortar. The Onryō is a warning about the perils of unresolved trauma, both personal and societal. It is a dark poem about justice, asking whether a vengeance that destroys the avenger as well as the target can ever be truly called just. It is a reflection of our fear of being forgotten and the paradoxical horror of being remembered only for our pain. But perhaps, at its very heart, the myth of the Onryō is a testament to the sheer, staggering power of a story. A single story of betrayal, told with such intensity by a soul at its breaking point, that it became a new law of nature in a shadowy corner of the world. The Onryō is that story walking. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe and continue the journey through myths.